How to sound natural. Gonna, wanna, and more. B1, B2 listening. Most English learners spend years memorizing vocabulary lists, practicing grammar drills, and watching hundreds of lessons on YouTube. Yet when they finally talk to a native speaker, something strange happens. Everything sounds like one long word, fast, blurry, impossible to separate. The student freezes, trying to translate, trying to catch up, but the conversation moves on without them. That feeling isn't about intelligence or motivation. It's about not knowing the hidden code behind native English. A code no textbook explains, no traditional teacher talks about, and yet it controls the way people actually speak in the real world. Native speakers don't speak the way English is written. They cut, connect, compress, and blend words into new sounds. I am going to transforms into I'm gonna. Do you want to disappears into do you wanna. Let me slides into lemme. And I have got to becomes I've gotta. At first it feels like a secret language, because it is. This code wasn't invented in schools. It evolved in streets, cafes, workplaces, and conversations between friends. It's the living heartbeat of English. The difference between speaking like a textbook and sounding like you belong. And here's the truth most learners never hear. This isn't just about words. It's about rhythm, about flow, about how ideas connect in real time. Imagine standing in a busy cafe. Two native speakers are talking next to you. They're not carefully pronouncing every syllable. They're blending. What you up to? Not much, just grabbing coffee. Wanna join? It sounds fast, casual, even messy. But it's not random. It follows patterns, predictable shortcuts, and speech habits that anyone can learn if they know where to look. In today's journey, you'll unlock these patterns step by step. But before we dive into techniques, you need to shift the way you listen. Stop chasing perfection. Stop worrying about understanding every single word. Start hearing the music of English. It's not about speed, it's about rhythm. Some words are stressed, others almost vanish. I want to go to the store becomes I want to go to the store. Listen closely and you'll hear the beat. English is less like math and more like a song. Once you catch the melody, the rest begins to flow naturally. Here's what changes when you understand this hidden code. Confidence. The fear of sounding foreign starts to disappear. You stop hesitating before every sentence. Instead of translating, you respond instantly. Instead of repeating mechanical textbook phrases, you sound relaxed, connected, alive inside the conversation. And no, this isn't about erasing your accent or imitating someone else's identity. It's about freeing your voice to move with the language the way native speakers do. It's about belonging. For the next 50 minutes, we'll build that transformation together. You'll hear real dialogues, feel the natural patterns, repeat them, and learn to create them on your own. We'll practice shadowing, mimic authentic rhythm, and train your ears to catch the shortcuts that make English sound effortless. By the end, these strange, compressed, connected sounds won't be confusing anymore. They'll be yours. This is your first step toward speaking English in a way that feels real, human, and natural. Sounding natural in English is not about speaking faster, memorizing bigger words, or trying to force an accent that doesn't belong to you. It's about understanding the science behind how real conversations actually work. Native speakers aren't thinking about grammar rules while they talk. They're not planning perfect sentences in their heads. They're reacting, connecting ideas, and letting the flow of the conversation carry them forward. Once you understand the patterns behind this, speaking naturally becomes less about effort and more about instinct. At the core of this science is something called connected speech. It's the invisible engine driving fluent English. While textbooks teach words separately, in the real world, people rarely pronounce each word as if it's isolated. Instead, they link them together, dropping sounds, reducing syllables, and creating new rhythms. For example, I am going to is technically correct, but most natives will say, I'm gonna. Do you want to becomes, do you wanna? And these aren't slang shortcuts. They're natural linguistic processes. Every native speaker, no matter the accent, does this unconsciously. Why? Because human speech evolved for efficiency, not perfection. Our brains are designed to save energy, and our mouths follow the same rule. When a group of sounds can merge, they merge. That's why English sounds like a stream instead of a set of blocks. But here's where most learners get stuck. They try to listen for every letter, every single sound, instead of hearing the rhythm behind the words. Once you stop trying to catch every piece and start listening for patterns, everything begins to click. You stop fighting the language and start flowing with it. Another important element of sounding natural is intonation, the way your voice rises and falls to express meaning. Native speakers don't just deliver words, they deliver emotion, emphasis, and attitude through sound. Listen to how someone says, "Are you serious?" It can sound surprised, angry, playful, or sarcastic, all depending on the tone. When learners ignore intonation, their speech sounds flat and robotic, even when the grammar is perfect. Mastering rhythm and melody is as important as mastering vocabulary. Now let's talk about reduction, a process that happens constantly in natural English. This is when certain sounds get softer or even disappear completely. Take the phrase, going to the park. In careful, slow English, you'd pronounce every word clearly. But in real life, it sounds more like Gunneth Park. The to the almost vanishes into a single smooth sound. These reductions don't make English sloppy. They make it efficient and easier to process for the brain. That's why natives do it instinctively. Once you start practicing them yourself, you'll feel your own sentences flowing more easily. And here's something most learners never realize. Your ears must adapt before your mouth does. If you don't train your listening first, speaking naturally becomes almost impossible. You need to hear connected speech over and over until it stops sounding strange. That's why in this episode, we'll dive deep into real conversations, repeat them slowly, and then speed them up to match native rhythm. This process rewires your listening, so your speaking can follow naturally. It's not about memorizing, it's about exposure and repetition. The science of sounding natural also involves what we call thought chunks. Natives don't think word by word. They think in phrases, grouping ideas together automatically. When a learner says, "I am going to the store," it sounds unnatural because every word feels isolated. A native, however, says, "I'm gonna go to the store," as one single, smooth thought. To reach this level, you have to shift your focus from grammar drills to patterns of meaning. This is why practicing with real conversations works better than studying isolated rules. By the end of today's session, you'll start hearing English differently. You'll stop breaking sentences apart in your head and start recognizing the flow beneath them. You'll understand why natives seem to speak so fast. And you'll learn that they're not actually faster. They're simply more efficient. And most importantly, you'll begin to unlock that same efficiency for yourself. The more you expose your ears to connected speech, reductions, and natural rhythms, the more automatic your own responses will become. Sounding natural isn't about perfection. It's about aligning your speech with the patterns that native speakers have used since childhood. Once you understand the science, the mystery disappears. English stops being a wall of noise and becomes something predictable, structured, and, most importantly, human. Your goal isn't to memorize thousands of expressions. Your goal is to master the patterns that make conversations flow. That's the science. And now, it's time to put it into practice. If you've ever felt like native speakers are talking too fast, here's the truth. Most of the time, they're not actually speaking faster. They're speaking smarter. They're using contractions, little shortcuts that make sentences shorter, smoother, and more connected. For learners, these shortcuts sound confusing at first, almost like a completely different language. But once you understand them, you start to hear English the way natives hear it. And when you start using them, your speech instantly sounds more natural, confident, and effortless. The key is understanding that contractions are not optional slang. They're part of everyday English, and nearly everyone uses them without thinking. Think about this sentence. I am going to meet her. On paper, it looks clean, perfect, and correct. But if you listen to two friends chatting, you'll almost never hear all those separate words. You'll hear, I'm gonna meet her. Two transformations just happened here. I am became I'm. Going to became gonna. This is the reality of spoken English: efficiency, rhythm, and flow. Now let's break down the most common contractions that completely change the sound of real conversations. Start with I am. In books, you'll see it written out, but in real speech, it's almost always I'm. I'm happy. I'm late. I'm tired. Then you are becomes you're. You're amazing. I saw them. They are becomes they're. They're waiting outside. Even auxiliary verbs like will, would, and have get reduced. I'll call you later. She'd love to join. We've been there before. Without these contractions, every sentence would sound robotic, unnatural, and too slow. But contractions go further than just shortening words. Native speakers combine entire chunks of meaning into single sounds. What are you doing? Becomes whatcha doing? Did you eat? Becomes jeet? Don't you think? Becomes don'tcha think? At first, these changes can feel intimidating, but the trick is to train your ears first. Listen for patterns, not individual letters. These aren't random. They're systematic, predictable, and used by millions of speakers around the world every single day. And here's why understanding contractions changes everything. When you don't know them, it feels like natives are skipping words, like pieces of the puzzle are missing. That's why learners often understand movies or podcasts much less than they expect, even at an intermediate level. But when you train yourself to hear gonna instead of expecting going to, the entire rhythm of speech starts to make sense. You stop getting lost in the flow, and suddenly, your brain catches phrases instantly instead of translating word by word. This is where shadowing becomes powerful. To make contractions natural in your own speech, you have to repeat them out loud exactly as natives say them until they stop feeling strange. Start simple. Say, I'm gonna call him. Then faster, I'm gonna call him. Push it until it feels smooth. Do the same with, do you want to join us? Listen to it, repeat it slowly, then speed up. Do you want to join us? Every repetition brings you closer to natural rhythm and timing. It's not about forcing an accent, it's about letting your mouth move the way English moves. There's also an important psychological shift here. Many learners hesitate to use contractions because they think it sounds lazy or incorrect. In reality, it's the opposite. Speaking without contractions actually makes you sound unnatural, formal, and distant in casual situations. Imagine saying to a friend, I do not know if I will go. It's technically correct but overly stiff. Most natives would just say, I don't know if I'll go. That's the difference between sounding like a textbook and sounding like you belong in the conversation. Another thing to notice is that contractions aren't only about speed. They also control intonation and emphasis. When you contract, you put more energy on the important words and let the small connecting words drop into the background. That's why natives sound like they're singing, with strong beats and soft connectors. I'm gonna go, we've gotta leave, she'd love to come. By reducing unimportant sounds, your speech becomes smoother and closer to how English naturally flows. Over time, contractions stop being something you remember to use and become automatic. Your brain recognizes the pattern, your ears expect the sound, and your mouth follows naturally. This is how you move from sounding like a student to sounding like a communicator. It's not about faking it. It's about aligning with how English really works. Today's lesson isn't about memorizing lists. It's about listening, repeating, and living inside the rhythm of real English. The more you expose yourself to these natural patterns, the faster they'll become second nature. Natives aren't hiding anything from you. They're not speaking faster than you can. They're just speaking differently. And now, you have the key to decoding it. If there's one technique that can transform the way you speak English faster than any other, it's shadowing. But real shadowing isn't just repeating random words. It's a science. It's about training your brain, your ears, and your mouth to move together in perfect rhythm with native speakers. It's about creating muscle memory for natural speech, so that the patterns, contractions, and connected sounds we've been talking about stop being things you study and become automatic parts of how you communicate. Shadowing is simple in concept, but incredibly powerful in practice. You choose a short piece of real spoken English, a podcast, a movie scene, or even a dialogue like the ones in this video. You listen to it once, just to understand the general idea. Then you play it again. And this time, you speak at the same time as the speaker, matching their rhythm, their tone, and their intonation as closely as possible. You don't wait. You don't pause. You flow with them, not behind them. That's the key difference between shadowing and just repeating after someone. Shadowing forces you to think and react in real time, just like in an actual conversation. Here's why this works. Your brain can't build fluency by processing one word at a time. Native speakers don't think like that. They speak in thought chunks, small groups of words that carry meaning together. When you shadow, you train your mind to recognize these chunks instead of obsessing over individual syllables. That's why learners who practice shadowing for just a few weeks notice their speaking speed, confidence, and listening comprehension improving at the same time. It's one of the few techniques that truly trains both skills together. Let's take a simple example. Imagine the native speaker says, "I'm going to grab some coffee. Want to come?" If you repeat after them, you might still separate the words. I am going to grab some coffee. But when you shadow, you force yourself to match the flow. I'm going to grab some coffee. Want to come? You pick up not just the words, but the melody of the sentence. How the voice rises, where the stress goes, how the softer sounds almost disappear. You stop fighting against the language and start moving with it. This technique is also incredibly powerful for mastering connected speech and reductions. When you shadow a real native dialogue, you're exposed to the authentic way going to becomes gonna, want to becomes wanna, and let me becomes lemme. You don't just learn the rules. You feel them. You let your mouth and ears adapt naturally, without overthinking. And the more you shadow, the more these forms start to sound normal, expected, and automatic. But here's the secret most learners miss. Shadowing only works if you immerse yourself completely. You can't mumble quietly or half-practice. You need to mirror every detail: the speed, the pauses, the stress, the emotion. Think of it like learning a song. You wouldn't sing half the notes and expect to sound good. You'd sing them all, matching the artist perfectly until it becomes effortless. English works the same way. Shadowing teaches you to sing the language instead of just reciting words. Now you might wonder, what if I can't keep up with native speed? That's normal in the beginning, and it's not a problem. Start small. Choose clips that are 10 to 20 seconds long. Listen a few times until you understand the meaning, then shadow the same segment repeatedly. Don't aim for perfection on the first try. Your goal is alignment, not speed. As your ears adapt and your tongue becomes familiar with the rhythm, your pace will increase naturally. Then, gradually, you can challenge yourself with longer, faster clips until you feel your brain anticipating the sounds before they even happen. Another benefit of shadowing is that it builds confidence without forcing you to think about grammar. You start speaking more smoothly because your mouth learns patterns, not isolated rules. Instead of hesitating and translating in your head, you begin to respond naturally, using the same shortcuts and contractions you hear in real conversations. Over time, shadowing rewires your mind to process English in real time, and that's what makes you sound less like a student and more like someone living inside the language. Here's a simple practice you can do after watching this video. Pick 2 or 3 dialogues we used today. Play them 3 times. First to listen, second to shadow slowly, third to shadow naturally with speed. Record yourself and compare your rhythm to the original. You'll be surprised at how quickly your timing improves and how much more confident your voice sounds. Shadowing is the bridge between learning English and living in English. It forces your ears, your voice, and your mind to work together in harmony. With just 10 minutes of focused shadowing a day, your listening becomes sharper, your pronunciation becomes smoother, and your fluency begins to grow without forcing it. And the best part? Once you master this technique, you'll start hearing connected speech everywhere, in movies, podcasts, and conversations, and you'll understand it automatically. In this journey, we're not just learning vocabulary. We're training your entire system to think, hear, and speak like a native. Shadowing is your shortcut to fluency. And starting today, it's the most powerful tool you have. Imagine stepping into a busy coffee shop on a Saturday morning. The background hum of voices blends with the sound of espresso machines, soft music, and clinking cups. In the corner, 2 friends, Alex and Jamie, are catching up after a long week. Their conversation is fast but relaxed, natural yet structured. And as you listen, you begin to hear the patterns we've been exploring: contractions, reductions, and connected speech flowing effortlessly between them. Alex: "Hey Jamie, what you up to?" Jamie: "Not much, just grabbing a latte. Gonna chill for a bit." "You?" Alex: "Same here. Needed a break from work. Thought I'd come hang out for a while." Jamie: "Cool, good call. So you want to sit by the window or outside?" Alex: Let's sit outside. Feels nice today." Jamie: "Yeah, totally. Let me just grab my drink first." Pause for a moment and notice what's happening here. No one said, "What are you up to?" Alex said, "What you up to?" Jamie didn't say, "I am going to chill." She said, "Gonna chill." These shortcuts aren't mistakes. They're exactly how native speakers make conversations sound smoother and faster. Now let's listen to more. Alex: "So how's work going?" Jamie: "Busy. Got a new project this week. It's kinda stressful, but, it's fine." Alex: "Ah, same old, huh?" Jamie: "Pretty much, but hey, guess what?" Alex: "What?" Jamie: "I got tickets for that new jazz show downtown. You wanna come Saturday night?" Alex: "No way, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm in. What time's it starting?" Jamie: 8, I think, but we gotta get there early or we won't find seats." Alex: "Cool. Let me check my calendar, but I'm pretty sure I'm free." This is real English. Sentences blending together, small words softening, and the rhythm driving the conversation forward. It's not rushed, it's efficient. And as you shadow this dialogue, you'll start to feel that flow in your own speech. Now Jamie gets up to grab her drink, and the barista calls her name. Barista: "Latte for Jamie." Jamie: "Thanks." Turning back to Alex: "All right, I'm good now." Alex: "Perfect. Oh, by the way, did you finish that Netflix series we were talking about last week?" Jamie: "Oh, yeah. Watched the last episode last night. Crazy ending." Alex: "Right? Totally didn't see that coming." Jamie: I know, we gotta talk about it later. Alex. For sure. But first, coffee. Pause again. Did you notice the phrases? By the way, crazy ending. Totally didn't see that coming. These little expressions are the glue that holds conversations together. They make your speech sound alive, flexible, and closer to what you hear in real life. Let's continue as the conversation moves to weekend plans. Alex. So what are you doing tomorrow? Jamie. Not sure yet. Might go for a run in the morning. Then I want to hit that new taco place downtown. Alex. Oh yeah, heard it's good. Let me know what time you're going. I might tag along. Jamie. Cool, I'll text you later. You free in the afternoon? Alex. Yeah, probably, unless my boss calls. But, fingers crossed, no work tomorrow. Jamie. Haha, right? We all need a break. Now let's break down what makes this conversation perfect for shadowing. Notice how often phrases reduce and connect. What you up to instead of what are you up to? Gonna chill instead of going to chill. Wanna hit instead of want to hit. Let me know instead of let me know. We gotta talk instead of we have got to talk. When you shadow this dialogue, focus on these natural shortcuts, but don't just repeat the words. Match the rhythm, tone, and emotion. Feel how the sentences rise and fall. Listen to how some words almost disappear while others stand out. That's where English lives, in the balance between what's stressed and what's reduced. This coffee shop scene isn't about memorizing lines. It's about absorbing patterns. The more you practice with real conversations like this, the more automatic your speaking becomes. Soon, you'll stop pausing to translate in your head. You'll stop overthinking grammar. Instead, you'll just talk, naturally, confidently, like you're part of the flow. And that's the goal of this episode. To take what feels complicated and make it feel simple, real, and human. Conversations like this one are your training ground. Repeat them. Shadow them. Live inside them until the sound of natural English feels familiar. Once it does, your own voice will begin to change. Not forced, not fake, just fluent. If you've ever listened to native speakers and thought, why do they sound so smooth, almost like they're singing? You've just discovered one of the biggest secrets behind natural English: rhythm. English isn't just about choosing the right words. It's about how those words move together, how some sounds stretch, others shrink, and how sentences breathe like music. Without rhythm, even perfect grammar sounds robotic. With rhythm, your speech feels alive, effortless, and natural. Here's the first thing to understand. English is a stress-timed language. That means the rhythm is built on beats, not syllables. Some words are stressed, louder, longer, more important, while others are unstressed and almost disappear into the background. Natives do this automatically without thinking, and it's one of the main reasons their speech sounds fast to learners. But the truth is, they're not speaking faster. They're just reducing the small words and stretching the important ones, creating a smooth, balanced flow. Let's take an example. I want to go to the store. If you pronounce every word clearly, it sounds stiff. I want to go to the store. But listen to how natives naturally say it. I want to go to the store. Only two words, wanna and store, are stressed. The to, the, and even part of want to melt into softer, quicker sounds. The sentence breathes, it flows, and it carries meaning more efficiently. That's the rhythm of English. The key is to listen for the beat. Native speakers always hit certain words harder, usually nouns, main verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. The words that carry meaning. The smaller connecting words like to, of, a, the, and that almost disappear. That's why learners often think English sounds like one long word, but really it's the opposite. There's a constant alternation between strong beats and soft connectors. Once you start hearing those beats, English suddenly stops sounding messy and starts making sense. Here's another example. Do you want to grab some coffee later? In careful English, you'd separate the words, but in real life it sounds like, do you want to grab some coffee later? Notice where the energy goes, wanna and coffee. Everything else becomes lighter, almost like background notes in a song. Native speakers don't think about this, they feel it. And starting today, you're going to train yourself to feel it too. One of the best ways to practice rhythm is through shadowing short dialogues, like the coffee shop conversation we had earlier. Don't focus only on repeating the words. Focus on matching the melody, where the voice rises, where it falls, when it speeds up, when it pauses. Record yourself and compare. At first it'll feel unnatural, even strange. But as your ears adjust, you'll start noticing this same rhythm everywhere. In movies, podcasts, YouTube videos, even casual chats between friends. Rhythm also plays a huge role in intonation, the rise and fall of your voice. In English, intonation adds emotion, contrast, and subtle meaning. For example, listen to the question, "You're coming?" Say it flatly, and it sounds like you're bored. Say it with a rising tone, and it sounds like excitement. Drop your tone at the end, and it can sound doubtful. It's the same sentence, but three completely different emotions, all because of rhythm and pitch. This is what makes English sound alive, and when you master it, your conversations feel more natural instantly. Another key element is linking sounds, connecting the end of one word to the start of the next. This is where reductions like gonna, wanna, and lemme blend perfectly into the rhythm. It's not just about speaking faster, it's about letting your mouth move without stopping unnecessarily between every word. That's why natives sound smooth. They're riding the flow instead of breaking the stream. But here's the most important part. Rhythm isn't just something you hear, it's something you feel. You don't count syllables, you follow energy. When you listen to a sentence, ask yourself, which words carry meaning? Those are your strong beats. Hit them harder. Let the rest relax and glide by. Over time, this instinct becomes natural. You'll stop forcing yourself to sound fluent and start flowing without overthinking. Here's a quick exercise you can try. Pick any short sentence and read it first slowly, stressing every word. Then listen to a native speaker saying the same sentence and match their flow. Pay attention to which words get energy and which ones get softer. Start small, practice daily, and repeat until the melody becomes automatic. This will sharpen your listening, improve your pronunciation, and make your speech sound smooth and connected. When you master rhythm, you stop sounding like someone reciting words from a textbook and start sounding like someone living inside the language. That's the secret. Fluency isn't speed. Fluency is balance. Once you learn to ride the beat of English, every conversation feels lighter, every sentence flows naturally, and every word connects to the next effortlessly. If you've ever listened to native speakers, you've probably noticed something interesting. They don't sound perfect. They pause. They hesitate. They stretch sounds. They use little fillers like, kinda, like, I mean, and well all the time. And yet they sound natural. Meanwhile, many English learners work so hard to avoid any mistakes, pauses, or imperfections. And ironically, that's what makes them sound less fluent. To speak like a native, you need to master imperfection. That's where micro-expressions come in. Micro-expressions are the small signals in your speech. Tiny pauses, changes in tone, hesitation sounds, and short connecting words that make conversations feel real. They're the invisible glue of natural communication. Without them, your sentences might sound correct, but they won't sound alive. With them, you sound more confident, more relaxed, and more authentic, like someone thinking inside the language instead of translating from the outside. Let's listen to an example. Imagine you're in a cafe and your friend asks, "So, what did you think of the movie?" Here are two possible answers. Version 1, textbook English. "It was very good. I liked the acting and the story was interesting." Version 2, natural English with micro-expressions. Yeah, it was pretty good, you know? Like, the acting was great, but I don't know, the ending kinda confused me. Which one sounds more like a real conversation? Exactly. The second one. It flows. It feels human. It captures how we actually think in real time, making tiny adjustments, showing uncertainty, reacting emotionally, and softening statements with little words and sounds. That's what micro-expressions do. They make your English sound alive instead of rehearsed. Here's why this matters. When you use micro-expressions, you also buy yourself time to think without breaking the flow of the conversation. Natives do this constantly. When they don't know what to say next, they don't freeze. They drop a quick, well, or you know, while their brain catches up. This creates a buffer that keeps the rhythm going and makes you sound comfortable, even when you're still processing. Pay attention to some of the most common micro-expressions. Natural pauses when thinking, you know, checking if the listener understands I mean, correcting or clarifying something like, softening a statement or introducing an example, kinda, sorta, making a statement sound less direct. Well, starting a thought or shifting direction. These aren't random words. They're strategic tools that make your speech feel conversational. And when used correctly, they also help your intonation sound more authentic, because your voice rises and falls naturally as you think aloud. Now, let's look at a real-life dialogue that integrates micro-expressions. Alex: "So, how's your new job?" Jamie: "Oh yeah, it's pretty good so far, you know? Like, the team's awesome, but, the deadlines are kinda crazy." Alex: "Haha, yeah, I bet. You getting any sleep?" Jamie: "Barely. I was up till, like, 2 last night." Notice how short, simple words make this exchange sound spontaneous. No one speaks in long, perfect, complete sentences all the time. Native conversations breathe. They pause. They include little hesitations. That's why it sounds authentic. Here's the best part. Once you start practicing micro-expressions, your listening skills improve too. Suddenly, you'll understand why natives skip words, interrupt themselves, and blend sounds. You'll stop getting stuck trying to hear every syllable and start catching the meaning, because your brain will learn to predict these natural pauses and fillers automatically. A simple way to practice: pick a short native dialogue, maybe even the coffee shop scene from earlier, and shadow it while paying special attention to the fillers, hesitations, and mini pauses. Don't avoid them, copy them. Match the uhs, the likes, the you knows, and the kinda moments exactly. At first it'll feel strange to add mistakes on purpose, but soon you'll realize these aren't mistakes at all. They're part of the music of English. Micro-expressions aren't just about speaking. They also help you connect emotionally with your listener. A tiny pause before answering can add suspense. A soft, "I don't know," can make you sound humble. A quick, "you know," invites the other person in. These small cues make conversations warmer, more personal, and more real. They make you sound less like a robot and more like, well, you. In this journey, fluency isn't perfection. Fluency is flow, and learning to think out loud with natural micro-expressions will make every conversation smoother, more confident, and more alive. It's not about sounding like a dictionary. It's about sounding human. If you've ever wondered why some learners pick up a natural-sounding accent while others struggle for years, here's the secret. It's not about memorizing phonetic symbols or forcing your mouth into awkward positions. It's about immersion, surrounding yourself with authentic English so consistently that your brain starts to recognize and reproduce the sounds, rhythm, and melody automatically. And the good news? You can train this skill without living in an English-speaking country. You just need the right strategies. Think about how babies learn their first language. They don't start with grammar books or phonetic charts. They listen, for months, before they even speak. Their brains soak up the sounds, the flow, the patterns. And then, when they finally start talking, they already know the music of the language. You can recreate that process as an adult, but you need to train your ears before you train your mouth. The first step is ear training. Choose a few native sources of English: podcasts, YouTube channels, Netflix shows, songs, or even TikTok clips, and listen actively, not passively. Don't just let the words wash over you. Focus on how sentences sound as a whole. Notice where the speaker speeds up, where they slow down, which words they stress, and which ones almost disappear. At first, you might feel lost. That's normal. But over time, you'll begin to hear the patterns you couldn't notice before. Once your ears start catching those patterns, the second step is mouth training. Shadowing. Shadowing is one of the most powerful techniques for building a natural accent. You pick a short clip of native speech, press play, and repeat at the exact same time, matching the speaker's speed, intonation, and emotion. Don't pause. Don't overthink. Just flow with them like you're syncing your voice to theirs. At first, it'll feel messy, and that's okay. Your brain is rewiring itself. After a few sessions, your pronunciation, rhythm, and confidence will jump to a whole new level. But here's the trick. Shadowing isn't about copying words, it's about copying energy. If the speaker sounds excited, sound excited. If they whisper, whisper. If they drag out a syllable for emphasis, do the same. This isn't just accent training, it's emotional training. You're teaching your brain to connect meaning, sound, and feeling, the same way natives do naturally. The third step is diverse exposure. Don't limit yourself to one type of English or one accent. Watch British interviews, listen to American podcasts, explore Australian YouTube creators, and catch Irish TED Talks. At first, it'll be challenging. Accents vary in speed, melody, and even word choice. But this variation makes your listening sharper and your own speech more flexible. When you only practice one accent, your ears become dependent on it. When you expose yourself to many, your comprehension improves everywhere. Here's a practical weekly routine you can follow. Day 1 to 2. Pick a short native clip, 15 to 30 seconds. Listen 10 times without speaking. Focus only on rhythm and stress. Day 3 to 4. Shadow the same clip 5 to 6 times, syncing your voice to the speaker. Record yourself and compare. Day 5 to 6. Choose another clip with a different accent. Repeat the same process. Day 7. Speak freely. Use the phrases and rhythm you've been absorbing all week in your own sentences. This method works because it trains your brain to feel English instead of forcing it. Over time, you stop translating in your head. You stop thinking about rules. You simply speak, and your accent begins to align naturally with the speech patterns you've been hearing and practicing. One powerful exercise is what I call accent layering. Choose your favorite movie scene, podcast excerpt, or interview. First, just listen. No repetition, no reading subtitles. Then, read along while listening, following the rhythm like sheet music. Finally, close the subtitles and speak with them in real time. By repeating this cycle, you gradually layer the sound patterns into your brain until they stick. You're not memorizing lines, you're programming instinct. And remember, a natural accent isn't about sounding perfect. It's about sounding comfortable. Natives don't pronounce every letter clearly. They shorten words, skip sounds, and slide from one syllable to the next. That's why you hear gonna, wanna, lemme, and kinda in everyday speech. When you start hearing these patterns in real conversations and practicing them intentionally, your own speech begins to flow. But there's one more secret: immersion without judgment. Don't obsess over mistakes. Every time you hesitate, mispronounce, or mix sounds, your brain learns and adjusts. The learners who sound most natural are the ones who relax into the process. They treat every interaction as practice, every movie scene as training, every song as an opportunity to mimic rhythm and emotion. Perfection isn't the goal, connection is. With consistent listening, shadowing, and emotional mimicry, your accent transforms naturally. You stop forcing English to fit your native patterns and start letting your mouth follow the music of the language. And when that happens, you won't just sound better. You'll feel better speaking, because the sounds will finally belong to you. One of the biggest reasons many learners struggle to sound natural in English isn't vocabulary, grammar, or even pronunciation. It's thinking in another language first. You build a sentence in Portuguese, translate it in your head, adjust the words, and then finally speak. By the time your answer comes out, the conversation has already moved on. It's exhausting, frustrating, and makes you sound slower than you really are. The real breakthrough happens when you stop translating and start thinking directly in English. The truth is, translation creates distance between you and the language. Every second your brain spends converting thoughts into English, you lose rhythm, confidence, and spontaneity. Native speakers don't build sentences word by word. They think in ideas, not individual words. To sound fluent, you need to start processing those ideas directly in English. And yes, it's possible. Even if your brain has spent years relying on translation, you just need the right techniques. The first step is to train your inner voice. Start narrating simple things around you in English. Okay, I'm making coffee. I need the sugar. Where's the spoon? This forces your brain to generate English naturally instead of waiting for a translation. At first you'll hesitate, and that's normal. But over time, your brain begins storing entire chunks of language instead of single words, making everything faster. Chunks are groups of words that often appear together, like, at the end of the day, by the way, a little bit, you know what I mean, or it turns out that. Native speakers use these constantly without thinking, and they're the building blocks of fluent thought. The more chunks you absorb, the less you translate. Instead of processing each word, your brain recalls ready-made patterns, speeding up your response time and making you sound natural. One of the best tools for this is comprehensible input, listening to content slightly above your level that's still easy to follow with context. At the B1, B2 stage, choose shows, podcasts, and YouTube videos that match your interests, but avoid overly complex language. This keeps your brain engaged without overwhelming it. Focus on the flow of meaning, not individual words. Don't stop every time you hear something new. Your brain will start guessing meaning automatically, just like it did when you learned your first language. Here's a simple mental exercise to break free from translation. Pick a short clip, maybe a podcast or a Netflix scene. Listen carefully the first time without subtitles. Try to understand the general idea, not every detail. Then listen again, but this time repeat key phrases aloud exactly as you hear them. Match the intonation, the rhythm, and the natural stress patterns. This way, you're not just learning vocabulary, you're teaching your brain to associate meaning directly with sound, skipping the translation step completely. Another powerful method is question looping. Take one topic, for example, travel, and create small questions in English. Where would I go? How much would it cost? Who would I travel with? Then answer each one in English, even if it's just one or two sentences. This trains your brain to connect ideas directly in English without switching back to Portuguese. Over time, you'll notice something incredible. You start dreaming, planning, and even arguing with yourself in English. That's when you know the shift is happening. But here's the thing. Thinking in English isn't about knowing every word. It's about using the words you already know more effectively. Learners often freeze because they're searching for the perfect word. Natives don't do that. They adapt. They simplify. If they forget exhausted, they'll just say, really tired. If they don't recall nevertheless, they'll say, but anyway. It's not about perfection. It's about communication. When you let go of perfection, your fluency accelerates. Immersion also plays a massive role here. Surround yourself with English, music, movies, conversations, podcasts, until your brain starts seeing it as a normal part of daily life. Even if you're not actively studying, passive exposure helps build instinct. The more your brain hears patterns, the more it predicts them automatically, and prediction is the key to natural thinking. There's also a psychological shift you need to embrace. Stop learning English and start living inside it. Change your phone's language. Set your playlists, apps, and YouTube recommendations to English. When you read a recipe, check the English version. When you search Google, type the query in English. Each tiny moment builds mental shortcuts until the translation habit disappears. And here's the best part. Once you stop translating, your confidence skyrockets. You'll respond faster in conversations. You'll understand jokes and idioms without stopping to decode them. You'll finally stop overthinking grammar and start feeling the language. Fluency isn't about memorizing rules, it's about creating automaticity, letting English flow out of you as naturally as your first language. At this stage, it's less about studying harder and more about training smarter. Short, daily immersion beats long, inconsistent study sessions. 10 minutes of active shadowing, 5 minutes of inner narration, and 20 minutes of listening daily can completely rewire your brain in a few months. Over time, you'll notice yourself living in English, not just speaking it. Thinking directly in English transforms conversations from stressful to effortless. You're no longer building sentences one brick at a time. You're riding the flow of thought. You don't translate your ideas. You think in the language of your ideas, and that's when English stops being a subject to study and becomes a tool to express who you are. If you've ever felt your English sounds robotic or disconnected, it's probably because you're missing one of the most essential tools native speakers use constantly: connectors. These are small phrases and expressions that link your ideas together naturally, giving your sentences flow, rhythm, and personality. Without them, your speech sounds like a list of isolated thoughts. With them, you sound confident, dynamic, and, most importantly, natural. Think about how you speak in your native language. You don't just throw words at someone. You guide them through your thoughts. English works the same way. Native speakers don't simply use words. They build bridges between ideas. These bridges are short, powerful, and everywhere in real conversations. The problem is, textbooks rarely teach them. But if you want to reach B2 fluency and beyond, mastering connectors is non-negotiable. Take a simple example. Someone asks, "Do you like living in São Paulo?" Without connectors, you might answer, "Yes, I like it. There are many things to do." It's correct, but flat. With connectors, "Yeah, I do. Actually, it's great, because there's always something going on, you know? At the end of the day, it feels like the city never sleeps." Oh, suddenly you sound alive, expressive, and conversational. One of the most common connectors is "you know." Natives use it constantly, not because they expect you to know something, but because it creates connection. It makes the conversation feel collaborative, like you and the listener are thinking together. "I was so nervous about the interview, you know, but everything went fine." It softens statements and builds rapport without adding extra meaning. Another powerful one is, at the end of the day, used to summarize your final opinion or conclusion. I thought about taking the job in London, but at the end of the day, I decided to stay close to my family. This instantly makes your storytelling sound natural and reflective, just like a native speaker processing their thoughts in real time. Then we have, by the way, perfect for smoothly changing the topic without sounding abrupt. By the way, have you seen the new episode of that series? It's one of those phrases that makes your transitions invisible, allowing conversations to flow naturally. Expressions like, as far as I know, or from what I understand, are also incredibly common in spoken English because they make your statements sound less rigid and more human. Compare these. I don't know if he's coming, versus, as far as I know, he's coming, but I'm not 100% sure. The second version sounds more nuanced and confident because you're sharing what you know without pretending to have all the answers. Exactly how natives communicate. Mastering connectors isn't about memorizing a giant list of phrases. It's about absorbing them through real conversations and practicing them until they become automatic. You'll start noticing patterns. Natives often start sentences with, well, when they need a second to think. They use, I mean, to clarify or rephrase something. They say, anyway, when they want to get back to the main point. They drop in, so basically, to simplify complex explanations. Each of these connectors carries a function. They guide the listener through your thought process, making your speech sound alive and authentic. One of the best ways to master these phrases is by shadowing real conversations. Find a podcast, interview, or TV series with natural dialogue. Choose a short clip and focus only on the connectors. Write them down, repeat them, and imitate the rhythm exactly. You'll notice how these tiny expressions almost glue sentences together. Without them, speech feels mechanical. With them, it flows effortlessly. Here's a simple daily drill. Pick a short clip of natural English, 15 to 30 seconds. Listen 3 times, focusing only on connectors like, you know, I mean, actually, by the way, etc. Repeat the clip aloud, copying intonation and emotion exactly. Use at least 2 of those connectors in your own sentences right after. The key is consistency. Use these expressions in real conversations, not just practice sessions. Start small. Add actually or you know to your sentences today. Then layer on, by the way, at the end of the day, and others as they become natural. Over time, you'll notice that your English stops sounding like a series of translated thoughts and starts sounding like authentic communication. And here's the bonus. Mastering connectors doesn't just make you sound more fluent, it actually helps you think more fluently. Because when you guide your ideas with these transitions, your thoughts flow faster, and your sentences become easier to construct. It's a mental shortcut, the same one native speakers have been using since childhood. By the end of this practice, you'll not only understand how these tiny phrases work, but you'll feel them in your speech. They'll stop being expressions you studied and start becoming automatic tools your brain reaches for without hesitation. That's when your English shifts from structured and mechanical to dynamic and alive, the kind of English people actually want to listen to. Let's be honest, one of the biggest obstacles holding you back from sounding natural in English isn't grammar, vocabulary, or pronunciation. It's fear. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of sounding ridiculous. Fear of not understanding the other person. And this fear is powerful because it doesn't just silence your words. It blocks your confidence and makes your brain freeze right when you need it the most. Here's the truth nobody tells you. Native speakers don't care about your mistakes. They care about the connection, the message, and the conversation. If you hesitate every time you speak because you're worried about being perfect, you'll never reach fluency. English isn't learned through silence. It's learned through interaction. Real, messy, imperfect interaction. You can't think your way into confidence. You practice your way into it. The first step to breaking this fear is accepting imperfection. Stop aiming to speak like a dictionary. Native speakers break rules all the time. They cut sentences short, start thoughts without finishing them, and use fillers like, you know, and I mean. Nobody talks the way textbooks teach. Fluency isn't about getting every word right. It's about keeping the conversation alive. Mistakes are part of the process, not evidence of failure, but proof that you're actually trying. A powerful technique to reduce fear is controlled exposure. Start by practicing in low-pressure environments. Shadow podcasts or TV shows where you repeat lines out loud exactly as you hear them. No one's watching, and there's no judgment. Then graduate to speaking with language partners, tutors, or even AI chatbots designed for conversation practice. Each step builds muscle memory. Your brain and mouth begin working together automatically, and confidence follows naturally. Here's something you need to internalize. Your fear doesn't come from not knowing enough English. It comes from overthinking. You're translating words, analyzing grammar, and predicting mistakes before you even speak. This slows you down and creates pressure. To break the cycle, you need to train spontaneity. Start practicing with fast response drills. Simple questions, short answers, no time to plan. For example, what did you have for lunch? Pasta. Where would you love to travel? Japan. Do you like rainy days? Not really. The goal isn't complexity, it's speed. Quick responses build trust between your brain and your mouth, making hesitation disappear over time. Another game-changing method is role-playing real-life scenarios. If you're nervous about job interviews, simulate one. If you're worried about ordering at a restaurant, practice that exact dialogue. Visualization works. When you mentally rehearse situations before they happen, you prepare your brain to respond under pressure. The more familiar the scenario feels, the less anxiety it produces. But here's something learners often overlook. Listening is your greatest ally in real conversations. When fear takes over, you tend to focus entirely on yourself. What if I make a mistake? What if I don't understand? But when you shift your attention outward, really listening to the other person's tone, rhythm, and meaning, your responses come more naturally. You're no longer trying to perform, you're participating. Confidence also comes from owning your voice. Stop trying to sound like someone else. Accents aren't mistakes, they're identity. Even native speakers have dozens of different accents, and none of them are perfect. Instead of erasing yours, focus on clarity, rhythm, and emotion. A confident accent, even if imperfect, is far more engaging than a forced, artificial one. One of the fastest ways to crush fear is immersion with feedback. Don't just consume English passively. Interact with it daily. Join online communities. Engage in group calls, leave voice messages, or participate in live chats. The first time, your hands will sweat. The second time, your voice will shake. But on the fifth or sixth time, something changes. You realize that nobody's judging you, that mistakes don't ruin conversations, and that your ideas matter more than flawless sentences. The psychological shift happens when you stop thinking of English as an exam and start treating it as a tool for connection. You're not performing, you're communicating. That simple change rewires your approach entirely. Suddenly, fear turns into curiosity, hesitation turns into flow, and conversations become opportunities rather than obstacles. Here's the mindset I want you to take away. Every mistake you make is a step toward fluency. Every conversation you start builds automatic confidence. Every time you choose action over silence, you win. Breaking the fear of speaking English isn't about eliminating mistakes. It's about changing your relationship with them. Once you stop seeing errors as failures and start seeing them as growth markers, you unlock the freedom to speak without holding back. That freedom, more than grammar drills or vocabulary lists, is the real secret to fluency. By the end of this journey, you'll realize something powerful. Fluency isn't about perfection. It's about connection, confidence, and courage. And the moment you stop letting fear control your voice is the moment your English truly comes alive. If you've ever felt frustrated because native speakers sound too fast or like they're swallowing words, you're not alone. Most learners think they have a speaking problem, but in reality, what's holding them back is listening. If your ears can't catch the rhythm and patterns of natural English, your brain struggles to process conversations in real time, and that leads to hesitation, self-doubt, and silence. The solution isn't listening more, it's listening differently. You need active listening, not passive exposure. Passive listening is what happens when you play a podcast or a Netflix show in the background while scrolling on your phone. It's comfortable, but it doesn't rewire your brain. Active listening, on the other hand, forces you to focus intentionally. It's about noticing how things are said, not just what is said. You start hearing reductions, stress, pauses, intonation, and linking sounds. The invisible patterns that make native English flow naturally. Let's take an example. Imagine a native speaker saying, "What do you want to do?" In textbooks, it looks simple. But in real life, you'll hear, "What do you want to do?" 4 words collapse into 3 beats. If you're waiting to hear, "What do you want to do?" you'll miss it entirely. The same happens with phrases like, "Did you, didja, I don't know, dunno, let me, lemme, going to, gonna." This is connected speech, and until you train your ears to recognize it, native conversations will always feel like a blur. Here's how you start training. Pick short, authentic clips from podcasts, YouTube videos, or interviews. Forget long academic listening exercises. Choose real speech. Select just 10 to 20 seconds and play it over and over, focusing not on the meaning but on the sound. Ask yourself, where does the speaker speed up? Which syllables disappear? Which words are stressed? At first it feels like decoding a secret language, but soon you'll start recognizing recurring patterns. After listening deeply, the next step is echoing. Repeating what you hear immediately after the speaker, matching their rhythm, tone, and speed. This is not about perfect pronunciation. It's about training your brain to process and reproduce natural speech in real time. Over time, you'll stop expecting formal English and start recognizing real English, which is faster, smoother, and often messier than what you find in textbooks. But to truly master active listening, you also need variety. Don't just listen to one accent or one speaker. Alternate between American, British, Australian, Canadian, and other varieties of English. At first it'll feel overwhelming. Your ears will resist new patterns. But this discomfort is where growth happens. When your brain gets used to different rhythms and reductions, understanding becomes automatic, no matter where the speaker is from. Another powerful strategy is script syncing. Find a video with subtitles or a transcript. First, listen without reading, and try to catch as much as you can. Then, read the subtitles while listening to understand what you missed. Finally, listen again without subtitles and test yourself. This triple pass method pushes your brain to actively fill in the gaps between sound and meaning. Active listening is also about predictive awareness, training your brain to anticipate what comes next based on context. Natives don't understand every single sound either. Their brains constantly predict meaning from patterns and clues. For example, if someone says, "Hey, do you want to grab a?" your brain instantly prepares for coffee, bite, drink, or something similar. Practicing this predictive skill speeds up your comprehension dramatically. To build consistency, I recommend dedicating 10 minutes daily to focused listening drills. Pick a short clip, 15 to 30 seconds. Listen 3 times without subtitles. Focus on intonation and word linking. Shadow the clip in real time, matching the speaker's rhythm. Listen once more while reading the subtitles, confirming what you missed. This technique builds automatic ear-brain-mouth coordination, which is the foundation of natural conversation. Here's the mindset shift. Native English isn't faster than you think. It's just different from what you were taught. Once your ears adjust to the shortcuts, reductions, and patterns of real speech, your understanding skyrockets. You stop panicking, you stop translating, and you start flowing with the language instead of fighting it. When you master active listening, something magical happens. Conversations stop feeling like tests. You no longer freeze when someone speaks quickly because your brain is trained to expect the music of English, not just the words. You stop chasing perfection and start connecting with meaning, and that's where real fluency begins. The fastest way to make your English sound natural and engaging isn't learning hundreds of new words or memorizing grammar rules. It's mastering the art of storytelling. Humans are wired for stories. Since the beginning of time, people have shared knowledge, emotions, and culture through narratives. And in conversations, storytelling is what separates robotic, flat communication from authentic, memorable connection. Think about it. When native speakers talk, they don't just throw facts at each other. They set the scene, create tension, add emotion, and deliver a punchline. Even a simple sentence like, "I was late to work," often comes packaged as a story. "So this morning I left my apartment late because I couldn't find my keys, and then halfway to the bus stop, it started raining. And guess what? When I finally got there, the bus had just left." Suddenly you're drawn in. You can see the scene, feel the frustration, and anticipate the ending. That's the power of storytelling. And it's also one of the best tools for mastering B1, B2 English fluency. The first step is learning the 3-part formula every great story follows: setup, conflict, resolution. In the setup, you introduce the context. Last weekend, I went hiking with some friends. Then comes the conflict. Something unexpected happens. Halfway up the trail, it started pouring rain. Finally, the resolution. We found shelter under a giant tree, laughed about it, and decided to head back. This structure gives your sentences purpose and direction, which makes them easier for both you and your listener to follow. But to sound truly natural, you need to add what I call emotional connectors. The little details and reactions that make the listener feel what you felt. Instead of saying, "I missed my flight," try, "You won't believe what happened. I got stuck in traffic, and by the time I reached the airport, the gate had just closed. I stood there, totally shocked, thinking, no way, this can't be happening." The second version pulls people into the moment. You're not just reporting events, you're reliving them with the listener, and that builds connection. Another storytelling secret is anchoring your narrative with sensory language. English becomes more vivid and memorable when you describe what you saw, heard, felt, or smelled. For example, "The coffee smelled amazing, like chocolate melting. I could hear the rain pounding against the window. My shoes were completely soaked, squish, 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 with every step." These tiny sensory details make your stories come alive, and they also force your brain to think in English, not translate word by word. A common mistake learners make is trying to translate their stories from Portuguese or any other language into English in real time. That slows you down, creates unnatural phrasing, and feeds your hesitation. Instead, practice thinking in story blocks. Focus on telling short narratives with simple sentences, rather than building complex translations. For example, instead of struggling with "Eu estava indo para o supermercado, mas aí choveu, então decidi voltar para casa," say naturally, "I was on my way to the supermarket, but then it started raining, so I decided to go back home." Short, smooth, and exactly how natives would say it. To master storytelling, practice mini dialogues with yourself. Pick a short personal event from your week and describe it out loud, using expressive tone and natural rhythm. Imagine you're talking to a friend, not giving a speech. Record yourself, listen back, and ask, "Did my story have a beginning, middle, and end? Did I use connectors like, and then, but suddenly, you won't believe, or guess what? Did I sound flat, or did my intonation make the story feel alive?" Here's a quick drill you can try today. Choose one simple story from your life: missing a bus, meeting someone new, cooking a meal. Write down 3 key moments: the setup, the problem, and the ending. Tell the story out loud without reading. Focus on natural speech, not perfection. Add 2 or 3 emotional phrases like, "I couldn't believe it," or "I was so nervous." The more you practice telling real-life stories, the more confident and spontaneous your English becomes. You'll stop searching for individual words and start speaking in connected ideas. And because stories are easier for the brain to remember, your vocabulary sticks faster, and your fluency grows naturally. Storytelling is also your secret weapon in conversations with natives. People don't remember lists of facts, but they remember how you made them feel. When your English carries emotion, humor, and tension, you become instantly more engaging, even if your grammar isn't perfect. And the best part? You'll notice that people listen more, respond more, and connect with you on a deeper level. By mastering storytelling, you move from simply speaking English to sharing experiences in English. That's when fluency stops being a technical skill and becomes a human connection. And that's when people stop hearing you as a learner and start hearing you as a communicator. Here's a truth most learners never hear. Your grammar can be perfect, your vocabulary advanced, and yet your English can still sound unnatural if you ignore one thing: intonation and rhythm. Native speakers don't just say words, they play with their voice. The melody, the stress, and the pauses create meaning far beyond the words themselves. If you want to sound confident and engaging, mastering these patterns is non-negotiable. Think about this for a second. The same sentence can express 5 different emotions just by changing the tone. Take the phrase, "You're coming," rising tone; excitement, "You're coming," flat tone; disappointment, "You're coming," falling tone; certainty, "You're coming," rising falling tone; curiosity, "You're coming," playful tone; teasing, "You're cooming." The words don't change, but the meaning completely transforms. Without control over intonation, your English can sound robotic, like a GPS giving directions. With the right melody, you sound alive, relatable, and connected. Let's break down the 3 key elements you need to master. 1. Intonation. The music of English is not a flat, monotone language. Natives naturally raise and lower their pitch to signal emotion, emphasize key words, and keep the listener's attention. Unlike some languages, English uses rising intonation for yes-no questions, falling intonation for statements, and a mix for expressing surprise or uncertainty. For example, "Are you ready?" Pitch goes up at the end. "I'm ready." Pitch goes down at the end. Training your ear to hear these pitch shifts, and then practicing them, is the fastest way to make your speech sound instantly more natural. 2. Stress, highlighting the important words. In every English sentence, some words carry more weight than others. Native speakers instinctively stress content words, the nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs that hold meaning, and reduce function words like they, a, of, and to. Take this sentence: "I'm going to the park after lunch." A native speaker naturally emphasizes, "I'm going to the park after lunch." The other words shrink in volume and length. This creates a rhythm, stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, that makes English flow like music. Without it, speech sounds heavy and unnatural because every word is pronounced equally, like a drum beat with no variation. 3. Rhythm. Linking everything together. English is a stress-timed language, which means the timing between stressed words stays relatively consistent, and the unstressed words squeeze in around them. That's why native speakers sound faster. They compress small words instead of pronouncing everything carefully. For example, instead of saying, "I am going to go to the park," a native speaker says, "I'm gonna go to the park." The rhythm comes from the dance between longer stressed beats and shorter unstressed sounds. Once you catch this pattern, you'll start hearing the pulse of English everywhere. Now here's the secret. To master intonation, stress, and rhythm, you need deliberate practice. Shadowing is your best friend here. Pick a short clip, maybe from a TV show, podcast, or movie, and imitate it exactly. Don't just copy the words. Copy the melody, the pauses, the ups and downs, and even the emotion behind the voice. At first it feels strange, like acting, but this is precisely how your brain builds new speech patterns. Over time, you'll internalize these rhythms and reproduce them without thinking. Here's a simple exercise you can try today. Pick a 15-second clip of natural conversation. Listen 3 times just for melody. Ignore the words. Hum the intonation before you even try speaking. Shadow the clip, exaggerating stress and rhythm. Record yourself and compare. The goal isn't perfection. It's training your ear and mouth to move in sync with natural English patterns. Another overlooked tip: pay attention to pauses. Native speakers don't fill every second with words. They pause strategically to create suspense, signal transitions, and emphasize meaning. When you master pauses, your speech sounds calmer, more confident, and far more natural. When you control intonation, stress, and rhythm, something powerful happens. People stop focusing on your English and start focusing on you. Your words sound smooth, your ideas flow, and conversations feel effortless. You become not just understood, but memorable. The ultimate mindset shift here is this: English isn't just about what you say. It's about how you say it. Grammar and vocabulary give you the tools, but intonation and rhythm give you the voice of a native. Once you master this, your English stops sounding learned and starts sounding lived. You've just unlocked some of the most powerful tools to make your English sound natural, confident, and alive. But here's the truth. Knowledge without action changes nothing. You can watch hundreds of videos, read thousands of tips, and still feel stuck if you don't apply what you've learned. Real transformation comes from consistent, focused practice. And today, you already have the roadmap. Think about where you started. English felt complicated, fast, maybe even overwhelming at times. Native speakers seemed impossible to understand, and conversations felt like battles between your thoughts and your tongue. But now, you've discovered the patterns beneath the chaos. You've learned how native speakers really talk, with reductions, shortcuts, and rhythm, and why going to becomes gonna, want to turns into wanna, and phrases collapse into natural beats. You've trained your ears to catch these patterns, to recognize connected speech, and to decode English in real time. You've also discovered the secret to thinking in English: storytelling. You know that conversations aren't about memorizing perfect grammar rules or robotic phrases. They're about sharing experiences, creating emotional connections, and sounding alive. You've practiced painting pictures with your words, using sensory details, emotion, and rhythm to make your stories stick in the listener's mind. And you've realized something essential. Fluency isn't about speaking fast. It's about speaking naturally. But here's the moment that separates learners who dream from learners who transform. Taking what you've learned into the real world. It doesn't matter if you're B1, B2, or even C1. If you don't train like a native, you won't sound like a native. The good news is, fluency doesn't come from endless hours of studying. It comes from small, intentional actions repeated daily. Here's your action plan to move forward, step by step. Dedicate 10 minutes a day to active listening drills. Short clips, deep focus, catching reductions and rhythm. Spend 5 minutes a day practicing shadowing, matching your voice to the natural melody of a native speaker. Tell one short story about your day, out loud, every single day. Make it emotional. Make it real. Make it yours. Record yourself once a week and compare your speech to natural conversation. Notice your progress, no matter how small. If you follow this, something amazing happens. Your brain starts rewiring itself. Words flow more easily. Sentences come out smoother. You stop translating, and your thoughts connect directly to English. Suddenly, movies, podcasts, and conversations feel less like puzzles and more like stories you're part of. That's when you stop learning English and start living English. And here's a mindset shift to carry with you. Fluency is not perfection. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. They pause, repeat themselves, and adjust mid-sentence. Fluency is confidence, flexibility, and connection. It's about communicating ideas, feelings, and stories in a way that others understand and remember. You don't need perfect grammar to sound natural. You need real practice with real English. This isn't the end of your journey. It's the starting point for the version of you who sounds smooth, confident, and expressive in English. The version of you who joins conversations without fear, understands native speakers without effort, and tells stories that make people lean in to listen. Every drill, every repetition, every moment you spend practicing deliberately moves you closer to that reality. So here's your challenge. Pick one technique from this video and use it today. Practice a 20-second shadowing clip. Tell a 2-sentence story. Record yourself reading a short paragraph with native-like rhythm and stress. Don't wait until you feel ready. Start messy, start imperfect, start now. Because fluency isn't built in a single day. It's built day after day, with small, focused actions that compound into effortless confidence. You already have the tools. You already know the path. Now it's time to speak, listen, and live English with purpose. Trust the process, commit to practice, and celebrate every tiny victory along the way. Your natural, confident, fluent English isn't a dream anymore. It's a choice. And today, you've already taken the first step. Take control of your English. Tell your stories. Share your voice. And remember, it's not about sounding perfect. It's about sounding real.